Just remain standing for first responders everywhere. Thank you very much. Have a seat. Thanks for coming tonight. And we have some folks in the room. Thank you for coming. And hopefully we'll have a few Zoom participants as well. So Derek's going to let them in the room. And while that's happening, I'm going to change the order of things, gentlemen, tonight, as is my prerogative. We're going to hold the budget for just a few minutes to complete the rest of the business, which should take only a few moments. This meeting is being recorded via Zoom, and a recording will be uploaded later to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. Under the chairman's report, the Pipeline Task Force, Futurist Committee, and Conservancy Board are seeking new members. Please contact Derek or fill in an ABC volunteer form, and that's in the forms and applications page of the website. This evening, we met in an executive session to discuss personnel matters prior to the meeting. There are no public hearings. There are no emergency reports. There is not a financial report. There are no approval of minutes. There is no old business. Let's see, the budget is going to come up in just a minute. Standing issues. Derek, do you want to take over on that?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Hershey's Mill Dam project, we're essentially waiting on two things to wrap that up right now. We are waiting on, and it's supposed to be by the end of the month. As Mark knows, we're waiting on the maintenance plan from the landscape architect so we can get a schedule going of exactly what we need to do and when we need to do it. And then we are also waiting for the as-builts. So essentially the company that does the work has to do the as-builts of an engineering plan to compare to what was supposed to be built and just see how that meshes together and see if everything was done the way it was supposed to. And if not, adjust financially or what have you to then. So those are the two things we're waiting for on Hershey's Mill Dam
How long do you
project.
think that'll take?
Well, I know the maintenance schedule we're supposed to get by the end of the month. I know there was a couple of delays on the as-builts, Mark. I don't know the specifics of it. Okay. So it has to be soon because, you don't want to get that in the winter and,
Yeah.
but,
Good.
so
Good.
hoping by the next meeting, we can report something update there. That'd be
Any
nice.
serious punch item list? Any serious punch items? Until you get the as. Oh, of course, that makes sense. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, and then under the Milltown Dam Project, I am going to say we finally got the project permit.
Woohoo. 2 years
Oh
later.
my
2
gosh,
years
that
later.
took forever. So we do have the project permit. Derek, you're going to be in the next couple of weeks sending out a letter then to the residents in that area
Yeah, so we're gonna do a radius of
as promised.
we're gonna do a radius of some sort geographically to capture that area. Send out letters letting them know where it stands. We did get our permit. Now there's more legwork for us to do, but at least it's in our control to a
Right.
certain extent. So we got it, and DEP, I signed off on the DEP permit, got it back to them. I just got it back to the Army Corps because we needed to run it by Army Corps as well. So that happened today. And now we are working on the bid documents. Part of the things we're working on the bid documents that we're trying to capture sort of the core work. We want the big documents to be in a manner that capture the core work that has to be done, and then look at the options going down the line. I think because of the skyrocketing cost of this project, it's important to get the bid documents right and transparent. So we're going to be doing that over the next few weeks. The good thing is that it's not going to be too much of a holdup because, talking to DEP, the Army Corps, and our project manager, unfortunately, because it took this long, we're probably not going to be able to break ground till very early spring at this point. So the bid documents aren't a holdup per se. I still would like to get them out sooner rather than later because I do want to have some sort of town hall for those residents again
Right.
sometime right after the new year.
Okay.
But I want to do that after a contractor is selected because I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have a town hall without a contractor that's going to be on the ground doing the actual work. So essentially the next two steps, as far as the public should be aware of, getting the bid documents ready. And then as soon as it's bid out, we have a contractor getting a town hall together before groundbreaking.
Okay.
So he can kind of capture everything that's going to be done in that area.
Great.
Let me just ask a question, Michelle, if I might.
Yeah.
Does Gannett Fleming, are they aware if they are aware, are they in sync with our bid documents, putting out essentially the core, as you say, and a whole list of options? Are they on board with that? Or do
Yeah.
they say to you, there's certain things you make one thing, these may not be options where they have to be included in the core? Have you guys coordinated?
Yeah,
on
so
what-
I had about an hour conversation last week with Eric at Gannett Fleming, who's our project manager. And yeah, essentially he's on board with it, but he is working on it right now. I mean, I don't want to have an overwhelming amount of options, but I like to have a few options to say this is part of the master plan, as he described it, to enhance the area versus
Down
just
the
the
road.
versus just, well, or if the board wants to do it right away.
Oh, well, sure.
Or just the dam work that is essential to that project and our responsibility under the permit.
Okay.
So that's kind of how
Okay.
we want to break it
Alright.
up.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to say, is there any other matter that the board felt important to bring up this evening? There are no liaison reports, there's no correspondence, and we're gonna reserve public comment for after the budget presentation.
I think you should say a word about the Friends dedication.
Oh, that's right. Yes, we did have a terrific art walk this past weekend.
Yeah, I saw your
Jason
comment.
did a really terrific job with organizing that, Jason and Jess, and they should get the kudos that they deserve for that. And Mark Miller's team also getting out there and getting it set up and cleaned up so nicely. We had about 65 vendors. The ESAC was there, and David, do you have any idea how many steps were?
I
Did-
didn't hear the final number.
Oh, okay, I was just wondering how many steps our residents
I didn't get that number.
logged in, but the nice thing is that we had the dedication for the bench and the historical marker for the Goshen Friends Meeting House. And it's just right down at 352 and Paley Pike on Paley Pike. So you'll have to go, when you're on the trail sometime, you'll have to go check out the bench and read the marker. So thanks for reminding me about that. So, all right, so I think that the only order of business we have at this point is Dave, the budget, please.
So 2 weeks ago, we talked about, excuse me. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about the general fund budget, which is our primary operating fund. And now we have a number of other funds. There's about 11 other funds, which are all tied into major capital projects and funded by either sewer rates, refuse rates, or by the general fund, which is funded by taxes. So what's a fund? By definition, a fund is a set of interrelated accounts which record assets and liabilities related to a specific township purpose. And the accounting function of funds is to monitor and account for revenues dedicated to a specific purpose and the sums of money that are available, budgeted, and expended for a particular purpose. Over the years, East Goshen Township has established several types of funds, including operational funds, reserve funds, capital funds, and enterprise funds. We have several capital reserve funds which have exclusive purposes of purchasing capital assets or infrastructure expenditures. They're used for large capital items or projects. So a lot of we have East Goshen Township's debt profile here. Total of about $18 million from 2023 until 2037.
What page are we on here?
This is
Very first page, Michelle.
I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, no, but page, page 2 after including the cover.
The headline or at the top, it says debt of the last word.
Okay, got it.
Circle it.
So 39% of that 18 million is the general fund debt, primarily the 2017 general fund bond that was taken out. And then we've also got 61% of that debt is sewer fund debt. That is a number of notes as well as 2017 bond money. Major capital projects are funded by multiple revenue sources. And that could be municipal bonds or loans, capital reserve funds, awarded grant money, federal or state or federal disbursements such as FEMA or ARPA. The general fund debt and capital reserve funds are funded by taxes and sewer debt. and sewer capital reserve are funded by sewer rates. In comparison, municipal bonds or loans are dollars received upfront to pay for high-cost projects, then repaid annually over a long-term principal interest payment period. At this time, about 5.616 million or 69% of the original 8.097 million 2017 bond proceeds have been spent. An additional $270,000 has accumulated on that money in the meantime, since it was awarded through accumulated interest earnings.
I just note it's interesting to me that for the next 10 years, our debt obligation is flatlined. It's pretty much the same unless we do any new borrowing. We pretty much have it consistent through 2032, and then the good news is it drops
Yeah.
after that as we pay off some of these. So you don't see spikes and you don't see radical changes year on year to the debt.
Yeah, but if you break out, you separate the general fund from the sewer fund debt. In the sewer fund, we have 10.9 million through 2037. There's a $1.4 million obligation through, I think it's 32. And then it's declining after that, which is great, but there's a long period of time between now and 2032, whether or not we accumulate more debt, new debt associated with the sewer fund. And had we not had ARPA this year, possibly a couple more dollars through the county and whatever that tranche is from the feds, we would probably be looking to have to borrow money in 2023. So good news is that debt is going to start to show itself, but that's 10 years down the road. And there's a lot of sewer infrastructure to maintain in the meantime. So that's a real watch point associated with the sewer fund.
Yeah, and they call this stepping it because they've looked at 2008, 2013, and 17, 2003. So they look at the debt profile with the financial managers when we go out for debt, and they come up with terms which are going to fit us into an overall total dollar that we can afford from year to year.
Essentially a wrap many times is what will occur, so that you don't inflate and then blow your whole.
Yeah, it
system.
keeps you on a flat line like this until, so you're not jumping up and down.
Minimal principal initially until you,
Exactly. I mean, like our 2017 general fund bond is $5,000 a year until 2024.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the debt. Where are we showing what we're taking in? Our revenue,
Revenue from.
Well, we're gonna get to that, but this,
sewer revenue.
well, that comes up. But this is just to show the profile where we are with obligations at this point in time that are factored into these budgets. So it's just an overall sheet to say, you know, yeah.
And how long will that be?
That gets funded by.
All right. Well, I want to compare revenues to these debts.
Oh, yeah, what that,
And
we'll see
that's
that.
hard to do if we're not on the same pages here.
Oh, you'll see it in the actual budget, so John, coming up. You'll see it.
Will be.
But Dave has just tried to outline debt, and then he wants to show some of the major capital projects timeline, so that he has a couple of, the big pictures of those two items, capital projects as well as debt, that ultimately have to be factored into the budgets, and that'll show up. Or
And Dave, your microphone's off, Dave.
So John, the extra handout that you have, that's the detailed by line on page 5 of 14, you'll see the 2023.
sewer operating budget.
I'm sorry.
Page
5 of 14.
This one, not the presentation sheet, but the separate packet.
Separate
Looks like this.
All right, well,
Yeah, that's it. Page
So
5.
2023, a proposed 4.321 million for sewer revenue. Operating fund revenue.
okay, and how's that figure against the debt then?
Well, we pay,
We pay 1.5 in 23
Just
on
shy of
sewer debt.
No, that's total,
Total.
total debt. Total operating sewer fund debt is 973,000. Principal and interest.
Over here it is.
All right.
So if you look on 7 of 14,
Mhm. There you-
you'll see down, you see the DVRFA. Principal payment, 9.5. Principal on diversion loan, Series 2017 Go Bonds principal. Those are the principal payments, and then the interest is located under them.
Yeah,
You see it, John?
yeah, 5 and 7, and I'm jumping all over the place.
No, just go to 7 and you'll see the debt that's structured into the 23 budget as it's been structured into the prior year's budget.
And the key thing there is that if the ended fund balance reduces from 1,011,000 to 845,000. So it erodes the ending balance rolling into the following year.
Yeah, there's a projected deficit this year at this point in time, and then currently there's a budget deficit projected for next year with what's in the budget. And I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of wiggle room in the budget at this point in time. So I just simply said, well, it's possible we're gonna need another rate increase. That's just the reality of it. So that's where I am at the moment on that.
Yeah, 5 is the income.
Yeah,
Do we wanna go
Don,
back to
or
the
we still,
capital?
you okay, or should we hold off for a minute till you have more questions on that?
So the, on page 5 of 14, the 4,321,000 is the income revenue. And the expenses is the 4,487.
Right?
And the 165,9 is what we're short.
Correct. Yep.
Okay,
That's the big picture.
okay, and before we talk about increasing fees, we should
just did
talk
that.
about cutting expenses,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where that's gonna be, knowing the municipal authority, they look at this pretty closely. I hear chuckling back there, but it's a pretty
So-
tight budget.
So, what did we just increase the fees to this year? And when does that take effect?
October billing, and that is $20 flat per quarter, fixed
So,
rate increase.
okay, so $80 per year.
And
Yeah,
that's factored,
That's factored in already.
That's already
Okay.
factored in.
So we're 165 short on that one, okay.
And if you recall, Dave had said back when the rate increase was indicated, that you were really looking for,
40.
there you go. So there it is.
All right.
And we also delayed it 1 quarter.
Right.
Okay, we can get back to page 3 then.
Okay.
Okay,
So here are the major capital projects and the timelines as we see them currently. These are always fluctuating. We're always getting new estimates, but currently as of November 21st, 2022, or September 21st, September 2022, we've got total outstanding projects, cost estimates. Cost estimates total is 25 million. We've actually project to spend in the preliminary budget 4.2 million. And this is the Paoli Pike Trail. We're not assuming anything in the budget for that. Milltown Dam, I'm using 50% of the engineering costs and 60% of construction costs in 2023. Some of that will come from bond money that we've already allocated to it. And the rest will either have to come from an infrastructure, or as in here, I've put it coming from the capital reserve fund. Hershey Mill Dam is basically almost done. We have some park improvement projects that were finished up with the 2017 bond. And we have court improvements to pickleball and tennis courts in the 2023 budget of 125,000, and about half of that is going to be from a grant that Jason went out for and it was awarded. A big part of the sewer debt is the West Goshen sanitary treatment plant upgrades. I have all that detail on an upcoming slide, but contractually, we have to pay 16.67% of general capital upgrades for their sewer. And because of our usage from them, and 54.8% of any capital improvements to the West Town Way pump station, which is currently over the original budget in 2016 and 17 by about $1 million. So the Hershey Mill Estates sewer project, we are funding with a great deal of ARPA money, and even so, almost $500,000 will need to come out of sewer reserve to fund the remainder of that. We are trying to get additional grant monies, but those aren't included. TBD, if we get awarded, we'll find out sometime this summer, probably, if we get Milltown money, and we'll find out probably sometime in November where we get, whether we not Hershey Mills Estates sewer replacement money or not. We have the Ridley Creek Sanitary Treatment Plant Ultraviolet Disinfection System. That's a replacement project. We're assuming 50% is completed this year and 50% next year. Again, we're waiting on some grant money for that. Bow Tree Pond rehab is assumed to begin Mark just began it this past week. And this is assuming we do it only in-house work and it's completed in 2023. Obviously, if we outsource that and do it to spec, it would probably be closer to $1 million versus the 325,000.
Okay, and the next page is going to tell us how we're going to fund that costs remaining at $12,277,000.
Yeah, so the funding is coming from different sources for all of these projects. Primary is coming from the bond that we got in 2017, which has already been allocated for these projects and was the driving force to take that money out and pay interest on it. We have a 2.7% interest rate over the 20-year period. And we've got about 27% will come from capital reserves, 21% from grants already secured. And the rest would be from the ARPA funds, sewer cap reserve, and some was used from our old 2008 bond to fund current West Goshen sanitary treatment plant improvements. If we did not get the ARPA funds, then the sewer funds could have been depleted by an additional $1.9 million already. So the sewer budget that in 2022 is projected to finish at
160. 160.
basically $1 million would have already been depleted.
Oh, gotcha.
So like Mike alluded to before, we probably would be going out for additional notes or a bond. And I don't know, anybody who follows the financial pages, the Fed just raised rates again. So the climate for debt borrowing is not the most optimal time to get it. Any questions on this one?
Steve, did you also want to mention maybe now or later about the Aaa bond rating that we currently have in the township and how the borrowing can affect that?
Yeah, so we were renewed in 2021 by Kroll for our Aaa bond rating. It's not that many people in the state that have it, and it allows us to borrow funds at considerably better rates than Delaware Valley, Wells Fargo, any of the other places. So we have 2.7% that we're borrowing at, as opposed to 4.3%, 4%, and 3.1% for the rest of our debt. So having that Aaa bond rating definitely allows us for future projects to be able to take out debt when necessary, and be able to pay it off over time in a sustainable manner.
In the best rate possible.
Best rates that we can get, yeah, and at least just let you plan strategically and financially, kind of like that step process we were looking at, how would we paid over time. So, thanks, Chris. Yeah.
Okay, so what I see here then, the total current cost estimate was the 25 million that we had in the previous page. On the previous page, it said we had already paid about half of that, right? And we had another 12 million some to go. And I see sewer, the source of funds, sewer capital reserve, about 1.5 million, and capital reserve fund, 6.7 million. That doesn't add up to the 12. Are the ARPA funds are still available to us? We didn't spend that yet, right?
We spent 35,000 on the hybrid room for here and 913,000 we just wrote to go to West Goshen Sewer.
Okay, where is that shown in here?
It is ultimately because in the slide 4 with the ultimate source of funds, there's 1.879 million in ARPA funds.
Yeah, yeah. Part of that, we've already spent then.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Additionally, this year, we've made proposals and applications to try and achieve another 1.5 million in Chester County ARPA money towards the Milltown Dam Park rehabilitation, so that we could save our capital reserve funds. The Hershey Mills Estate Sewer Project, we're trying to get 600,000, which would also cover those sewer reserve funds we're looking at using. Bowtree Pond Project, that would offset our infrastructure sustainability funds, and sewer reserve funds again for the RC STP UV disinfection system. So we're going out for an additional 2.4 million, and we won't know till later in the summer and then in November sometime, whether we get any of it or some of it.
Later in September, you mean? Or wait, it's ARPA by the end of September. So we're waiting to hear from the county on that one, right?
ARPA, their ARPA, we're waiting to hear, and then the LSA, we're probably gonna hear in November.
November.
Yeah.
But ARPA, we should be hearing very shortly.
Well, they just did a first round.
They
that
did a
not
first
include
round.
Municipalities, so I don't know how quickly they plan to get the second round out as far as announcements. but
They had
I'm
a
hoping in the within the
ton,
next
every
month.
single municipality, I think, went out
Yeah.
for
A
money.
lot of stormwater
Yep.
related.
Yeah.
And do you have any insights on
Yeah,
that, David?
every township in Chester County applied for stormwater management funds from the Chester County ARPA funds. And so they're sorting through those. They had 310 applications. They awarded $38 million. By the way, Chester County, not all counties distributed their ARPA funds. Some counties kept all their ARPA funds and distributed them out to the municipalities. So hopefully we'll get some positive news on that. And those grants are not all or nothing. They may give us all of it or a portion of it or none of it, depending on. And what they did was the 3 commissioners set up teams because they had so many applications, and the teams looked over each one of the applications and made recommended awards to the commissioners, and then they fine-tuned those and basically didn't change any of them and issued those, the ones that were recently announced, I think $38 million. So hopefully we'll get something in the second round.
All right, well, the Milltown Dam Project then is budgeted what, 4.8 million? If we get the 1.5 million, we're still short 3.3 million, or am I wrong?
We have some other money.
That money's not, that wasn't, the ARPA money wasn't earmarked for Milltown, was it?
No,
No.
we have 1.9 million earmarked for the 2017 bond, and grant, we have 915,000 in grant money that we've been awarded. And then the other $2 million would have to come out of another fund, probably capital reserve, which is what I've projected here.
Okay, okay, I understand, thank you.
And that, by the way, that Milltown Dam cost estimate, irrespective of whether it shows itself to be more or less, with what we talked about earlier, when we go out for bid, the township will have a number of options. We can reject all the bids and hold off completely. We can accept perhaps a core bid and hold off on any options to manage it. So we're not really gonna know what's what until we see real numbers coming in with the bids later on in the months ahead.
Well, that's a good point, Mike. I'm not against the project. I'm in favor of the Milltown Dam
Yeah,
project.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get a handle on what it's gonna cost us
Yeah.
over and above the grants, and it looks like at least $3 million unless we really shave it down, and
Yeah.
I don't think we wanna go real cheap on it.
Yeah, clearly, we're gonna have to find a balance, and I think that, once we see the bids, and then we can kind of envision what we're gonna accomplish with, the core bid and then A, B, C, D option. We
Okay,
can kind of figure out and say, do we want to press it this year? Do we want to build that into a phased, improvement, schedule in the years ahead for other aspects?
Now, the only, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna quote Mike Lynch and say, most of these projects go up rather than down in cost.
That seems to be very
Absolutely.
true, especially in this
That's where
environment.
the sticker shock could come in these bids.
Well, speaking of finding a balance, the one thing we have to be careful is we have to look at what we're getting grant money and seeing what we have to do to obtain that grant money through DCNR and
That's
other.
right.
So-
That's
right.
So there's things we have to accomplish, even if it's not part of the quote unquote core project of the
Yeah.
restoration of the dam,
Yeah.
that we got money because we were gonna do this, or we got money
Yeah.
because we were gonna
Yeah.
do that. So.
It's much more park related than it is.
Yeah, and a lot of that's the
Yeah.
master plan
Yeah.
related. So we have to be
Yeah.
careful, and we
Exactly.
talked about that at
Yeah.
length Friday as well.
Yeah, that's a
I'm
very
that-
good point, Derek, that when
Yeah.
grant money doesn't come,
I'm that appearance.
no strings attached. It comes with a lot of strings attached.
Okay, well,
And then
I
they
just,
treat us like a puppet.
I just wanted to get a kind of a handle on where we're going with this. That's all. I don't wanna hold it up too much.
So the amount of dollars in the project for 2023 preliminary budget is currently $4,248,220. We've got about 38% of that expected to be paid for by the 2017 bond, 33% from the capital reserve fund, 19% from the sewer cap reserve fund, 7% from the infrastructure sustainability fund, and then 3% from grants.
Dave, quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
After the 1.2 million from Milltown and the almost 400 for the sewer upgrades, what's going to be left in the 2017 bond?
About it, right?
That's,
Tapped out, right?
let me look at my detail.
That's of course the question I forgot to ask you earlier, so.
No problem.
You guys had your act.
Oh, wait, I guess. it would be-
Either way, you're down with the.
There were about 600 left?
That's a big deal. I was impressed.
The 17 bond?
We would still have,
Well,
Less than 200,000.
Did you- which ones did you include?
After you take out the Milltown Dam and the West Goshen sewer sewer
Sewer.
plant, yeah.
Then aren't we less than 200,000 left in that fund?
I thought it was a little over 2 million that we had, but you could.
We will still have about $1 million that is,
Oh, that much.
that is for the West Goshen sanitary sewer treatment.
So it's already earmarked for something
But
else.
it's earmarked for that.
So we have no money to draw from once this is done from the 2017.
Not from that bond.
Okay, and that's the only bond we have out, correct?
Yeah, unless we are under budget on Hershey's Mill. I mean, we were a little bit over on the park and then a little bit over on Paley Pike, but if there's, once we get paid back by the grants, if there's additional money there, we could roll that towards it, but we just don't know yet.
I don't want to underplay it, but it's
No.
kind of scraps. I
Yeah.
mean, when you're talking about these big numbers.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, can we take a recess to take a deep breath or what? Let's just These numbers are daunting.
They are.
I like this chart, the way you broke that out, Dave.
No, thanks.
Yeah.
So just to get a handle on the Paoli Pike Trail, what we've done so far, we spent almost $5.5 million. Our predecessors have gotten grant money that was 3 million of that, so 56% of that total has been reimbursed. But we're still on the hook, which we've already paid for 2.4 million. And then really depending on how we do with alternate trail segment B, that's all I have in there for the remaining estimate. That was the highest value one they had. I think the lowest was 1.5 million. So it's either 4.3, 1.5, or there was kind of a middle ground that was about 2.3, which seemed to be acceptable, but we haven't really gone down that road just because these numbers are so big and we have other outstanding projects. And we would obviously go out and try and find additional monies if they're available for segment B.
I think as a board, one of the things I think the reality is for 23 is we're gonna have to come up with priorities. What are our priority projects gonna be? Is it gonna be Milltown Dam? Is it gonna be Paoli Pike Trail? I mean, they're the two big elephants in the room. And my sense is the Milltown Dam is the one.
That's more pressing.
Yeah, that's what
There
I
are more
agree.
issues with that. I mean, we don't have a choice. We have a permit now.
Well,
And
that's
now the
right.
time has started ticking and we
That's right.
have to really get that started.
Yeah.
Paoli Pike Trail could be put off till next year or the year after that if we have to put it off. But I think we also need to prioritize so that we don't have 7 big projects in the queue.
Can't
This
do
is just
it.
too much. We can't do it.
Well,
And-
not included either is the Milltown Pocket Park, which we've talked
Right.
about a little bit.
Yeah.
I
Right.
do have 10,000 in the general fund budget for it, just as a holding in case we started doing something there, but
That's
that's,
kind of a minor project when you think about it. And again,
yeah,
in the
it really
context-
depends on what we take on.
Well, sure.
It's not minor to the people down there.
Well, no, I mean, from an
That's
expense
exactly
standpoint,
right.
a budget standpoint, but for people that are gonna receive that service and, yeah, that's important to them, that, not discounting. that
And
one
just
bit.
to reiterate, we have nothing down in that part of the township right now and
Well,
to spend a
Cody
small
lives
amount.
down there, so
I know.
we have one,
We have one,
we have one thing down
we have
there.
one thing down there. But,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think that we have to be reminded that, we've got the Milltown project is going to be, it's gonna be big, it's gonna be long. And if we can spend a small amount of money and do a small project that can really please a lot of people, especially because of the construction we're gonna have going on, I think that we need to seriously consider making some small improvements. So
Yeah, oh, yeah.
a new swing,
with you.
a new swing set,
I'm with you.
and some picnic benches. I think that that's minimal money that we should be looking at spending. But some of these big projects, we have to put the brakes on. We have to do it. And things like sewer treatment plants we can't be putting the brakes on.
No, we need the caustic soda project, the UV disinfection.
We don't have a
Can't have
choice.
clean water without that, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't have a choice with that.
So here's the detail on the status of the West Goshen sewer treatment plants upgrades. The West Town Way Pump Station, which we're on almost 55% on the hook for, is contractually is in yellow. The revised estimate brings us up to where's that? Can you slide it down? You can see that. Oh, I think it's just cut off. I'll read it. So we would be on the hook, basically, the revised estimate we got this year is 1.851 million, which is primarily what we would have left to pay. We just paid 937,000 worth of that.
ARPA.
Yeah,
And Dave, am I reading this right? Down at the bottom, it says East Goshen share 10%.
that's a 10% contingency
Contingency.
that,
Oh,
that we
okay.
added in.
What is our share of the overall project?
54.
The West Town
54%?
Way would be 54.5%, but the total project includes So the other capital improvements were 16.67%. So the total of their entire thing was projected about 26 million, and we are about 5 million of that,
Mhm.
5.5.
Because we're a smaller percentage of the plant versus that pump station, we're a higher percentage because it's just us going in there.
Willistown has some of their
Nice, awesome,
capital
West-
improvements,
West
West
Okay.
Westtown does as well. And
Dave,
obviously West Goshen.
I have another question. This may be for Mark. How often do we have to plan for upgrades for these sewer treatment facilities? I know it's hard to guess, but when's the next time we have to renew our permit? Ballpark.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, phosphorus
Yes,
continues to be
it's
one
gonna
of
continue to-
contention
Yeah, and the restrictions are gonna get tighter and tighter.
and very expensive to treat that. But for those residents that are listening, the condition and the maintenance schedule and oversight by the municipal authority of the Wrigley Creek Sewer Plant has been, at least from my involvement as liaison with the municipal authority, has been exceptional. But it's big time infrastructure, and the example is this UV system, which is a tertiary part of the system. Its final treatment, ultraviolet light to fully sanitize. And that kind of, I guess we knew that system was wearing out. We couldn't get the parts for it. We couldn't get the bulbs. And you think, well, it's just a few bulbs, et cetera, but $200,000 later, and it has to be replaced. And the same with the caustic soda project. We got a grant, but also very expensive. Prior to the automation of this caustic soda system, the employees were carrying these bags up and pouring them into a tank. And we know the potential for injury there. So that was one of the things that precipitated that. Of course, it's also more efficient as well, the way it would be automated. But the infrastructure and the need for replacement or major repairs is always in the Hershey's Mill Estates sewer main failure. Despite all the televising that the township does each year, I don't know how many miles we do each year of televising, but the system is, I don't know, we have 120 miles of sewer mains. You can't do it all in one year. It's phased over 4 or 5 years. Infrastructure is aging, and all of a sudden we have a failure in one area, and it's $1.5 million. And we don't know where the next one will come. And with the existing debt, and of course, somebody may say, well, let's sell the system. Let's sell the system. Well, there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of uncertainty there. We've seen it in other municipalities right now with whether it's Willistown, East Whiteland, let alone some of the other big ones that have been in the news. So I think that the management of the Ridley Ridley Creek Sewer Plant has been exceptional. And it's an asset that it costs money to maintain and keep in good form. The DEP would probably say that we're an exemplary operation, but it costs a lot of money for essentially an essential service.
Okay.
And not included in that is every year we'll put $130,000 for relining, which is to help avoid those kind of things
Yeah,
from
flooding.
happening.
Yep.
But the Supply Valley, which we're planning on doing next year, is 260,000. So that's 2 years worth of just relining money we put aside, is as opposed to just 160,000 a year. So that's not even just the capital assets. That's the stuff under the ground that we don't even know about.
What are you lining with?
PVC.
That's it. Okay.
Okay,
Or is it like
okay.
HDP?
So the next slides, just stop me and ask questions if you want to. The I'm just doing a comparison of balances over time, revenue and expenditures and ending fund balances. And this is the liquid fuels budget. So Mark and finance go out for liquid fuel money from the state. It's roughly $500,000 a year, which we apply to primarily road paving, stormwater materials, and street lighting, things like that. So that's why it doesn't show a balance every year, because we basically net down to zero. A little bit aggressive in the 2023 budget. I'm hoping it's a little bit higher than we had this year, but this year was a little bit better than we thought.
But the nice thing about that bar chart is that they match up those two colors very nicely when you see the next ones. If they were
Doesn't
all
last
like
long,
that,
does it?
that would be wonderful.
So next is the capital reserve fund trend. You can see in 2018, we had $6 million as of final 2023 projection in the preliminary budget with the Milltown Dam Project, as well as what we've spent in the years intervening with Paley Pike Trail money. We're down to about 3.3 million.
Not enough.
Now, this is normally used, capital reserve funds aren't for big projects as much as it is. We put away annual depreciation every year, and that's funding replacement of all of our capital assets. That's the buildings. That's all of our trucks, the fleets, the tools. And just that alone is typically valued at about $5 to $6 million. If we had to replace it all at once, luckily we don't. Although you can see in areas like Downingtown and Coatesville that got hit by the storm, they had to cash in the insurance and replace
Let
everything.
me ask a question for the benefit of everybody involved, Derek and Dave. We have an operating reserve account, $1.5 million. What's an operating reserve fund for? We have a fund balance in the general fund, but we also have an operating reserve fund. in the
Yeah.
General fund. What's
So-
that all about?
So an operating reserve fund, I know. It's basically for continuity and to offset general fund deficits. So municipalities that took it upon themselves to put money away into a reserve are planning for future high costs, outpacing revenues, huge projects that have to be undertaken, storm wipes out a building, to keep the operational continuity of the township going and to be able to fund those costs.
Yeah.
Um,
So let me take it from there. So we have an operating reserve fund of $1.5 million with associated with our general fund. Right now, we're looking at this was in a prior meeting. So these are the other funds that we're talking about primarily tonight, but the general fund presentation we had last a couple of weeks ago, preliminary 23 proposed budget shows a deficit of about, was it 940?
740.
Oh, so excuse me, 740,000. So ostensibly, you could use some of the operating reserve fund to offset some of that deficit. However, each of these funds, they're just like our own household savings accounts. And I've always said that it's easier to spend than it is to save. So if you deplete that to pay for 1 year or a portion of 1 year's deficit, and there are other projected deficits ahead as we see our 10-year projections, are we going to just deplete that kind of a fund, or these funds need to be nourished and maintained? So they have to be funded, whether it's the infrastructure fund that we have, where we have about $1.5 million. Bowtree Pond is one of the projects we have for next year. Our capital reserve fund is dependent on the general fund. It has no other source of funds except from the general fund. That is going down. That's the trend we're seeing right now. So,
Mike,
so
let
go
me
ahead.
interrupt you. I think we need to recall that the capital reserve fund, or the operating reserve fund, I should say, transferred $1.25 million to these
Infrastructure sustainability fund.
sustainability. fund. So we're moving money around too.
Yeah.
We have to watch.
Yes,
that.
good point, John. This infrastructure sustainability fund, which was created this past year, was to recognize that we have assets and infrastructure that we don't capital schedule for. For instance, we don't capitalize stormwater. Typically stormwater systems. They're usually handled within maintenance and our operating budget. But a big storm comes along, a tropical depression, we could have some serious damage done. And we need to have funds available for that. And as you know, we've all talked about infrastructure nationwide, worldwide over these last 10 years and the importance of it and how, frankly, I think the baby boomer generation was a little bit short-sighted and we haven't been funding it. And so as a municipality, we thought that was a good idea. We had money in the operating reserve and we kind of split that baby, if you will. But again, we have a project coming up with that next year with $1.5 million in it now and 300,000 or so budgeted for next year against the infrastructure sustainability fund. We have no revenue source for that either. That comes from the general fund. So
Well, so I want to make a point here though, too. These are all dollars that have come from our taxpayers. We already have these dollars in place in our coffers. And I really don't think that we should be going to our taxpayers with so much in our reserves without first looking how we can rein in on some of the expenses. This is the problem with the tax. The tax into when we borrowed this money, and we had this tax imposed, this 1.25 millage or 1.2 millage rate imposed on us back in 2003. The intention was for that to go away in 2019, and it didn't go away. And so subsequently, all of our expenses have risen to that level of we have to spend that. We have it here, we must spend it. And so over the period of time, our expenses have risen and now are surpassing that revenue. And we've collected the tax from these people. I think that it's not right for us to even think about going back to them without first looking at how can we use some of the funds that we do have. We don't have to use all, but we have to look at using some of the monies we have in some of these funds to offset some of these expenditures, because we've already collected this money.
that's a good point, Michelle. I think a balanced approach is worth consideration. I know Dave is preparing an update of the 10-year projection for the general fund. It's not a pretty picture of what the prior 10-year projection was from last year. I don't know that that's improved much. We did see that over the course of these past 20 years, since the first property tax was imposed on us as taxpayers, that inflation, cost of living has gone up. What was it? Something like 47-48% during the period. And our revenues have gone up about 7%, something in that range. So we have not kept pace with it. And so while we have some of these funds, I think some balanced use of them is reasonable, but there's also a cost of doing business that we haven't kept pace with. And if we look at some of our
I don't
neighboring
disagree.
municipalities,
Yeah.
we see even West Goshen, which we've often looked at as well. They're certainly well-funded and they're doing well. Their millage right now is 2 mills. Westtown, I think, is up to 3.5.
It doesn't, but it
mills.
doesn't matter what the others are doing. It matters
Well, it doesn't, but
how
it's
we're handling
perspective.
our own money in our own house.
Well, and we are
So-
projecting in the 23 budget to spend 1.4 million of our current cap reserve fund.
Dave, that's only if we. What's our, so it says 1.3 here to Milltown Dam. Fund balance projected at 3.3 without deferring, but if we defer those costs, which, you gave us to consider, that's another 330,000. So our fund balance will go down to 3 million. Is that correct then? If we defer,
It would go down another 386,000.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
this
Down to 3
budget,
million.
this budget assumes that we don't defer capital from general.
But sorry,
as a
let me rephrase.
transfer, But it also does assume that we spend the capital.
So maybe I didn't ask that correctly. So the transfer for the capital replacement costs from the general fund, the capital purchase costs, both come from capital reserve.
Say that again?
The capital replacement costs and the capital purchase costs both come from capital reserve fund, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so to add to that, the capital reserve fund has a structured replacement schedule
Schedule. Yeah.
for each item that is in the capital reserve. So if you're going to defer, then you're looking at aging the capital infrastructure that much more, which could ultimately end up
Yeah. But
costing more.
separating those
There's
wasting
actual
assets
assets,
from
yeah.
the projects, the
Yes.
new projects, et cetera. That's an important distinction because I think the capital schedule and the maintenance of what we have is essential to maintain. The new projects are the ones where there's discretion, even though there have been representations to complete or not, or what have you. They're the ones that, you know, there may be some tough decisions there to hold off. And of course, when you hold off on these projects, as we know, they only become more expensive. So it's, you know, it's very daunting to try and find, Michelle, that balance, whether it's using some of the existing funds we have,
Right.
deferring projects. We've looked at our general fund, or we'll be looking at it more close, or our general fund budget for 23 more closely as to what expenses we may be able to cut or defer.
Yeah, we are not projecting that we are adding due to projects and things like that to the capital reserve fund. It's simply the regular transfer we would make for the accumulated depreciation on existing capital
On the
assets.
schedule, not on new projects. So
Correct.
That's what,
And
that's
then
what the.
And then we're proposing to spend 1.4 million out of the existing
I
fund
think,
on
I
projects.
think the point that Michelle was making, though, is that our reserves for all funds, if you add them up, are about $13 million, which
Which is more
exceeds
than our
our
budget.
yearly budget. So it's a point to keep in mind, that's all. Yeah. And there was just a reference now to getting to the budget. We don't have the budget in front of us here. We have the breakdown of the different funds and everything. Well, we do have the budgets in front of us for the other funds. They're there. They're here tonight. What page is that?
Oh,
This is
here.
the other handout, this one. These are the actual budgets, John. Well, it says mine says other funds.
Yeah, these are the.
Right,
bud-
other funds.
Yeah, we have-
budget.
These are other than general.
Yes, it's tonight's topic, but it's not the budget. Sure it is.
It's not the general fund budget.
Not the general.
general fund budget.
It's
just
we-
the other fund
We have
budget.
12 funds.
There are 8 different budgets, 10
Yeah.
different. I understand that. And every one of those budgets has a reserve. I thought we were going to go over the township budget, what I call the township budget, the general. Oh, I think we're going to dig back into that. I know we were going to talk.
There's another Q&A on the general fund budget scheduled for October 18th.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking about. And then in the meantime, John, we would agree that as individual supervisors,
We're gonna be
or
meeting
possibly
with-
2 supervisors at a time, meeting with staff to talk
Right.
about what our thoughts are in the general fund budget
Right.
and what we
Okay.
can do in that. And then that way we come together to
I
see what we
think
can do.
what we need to do is let Dave get through the rest of this.
Yeah.
Because we do have, it's 8 o'clock and it would be good to have the residents who are here be able to chime in on what their thoughts are.
Transportation fund, it's a rarely used fund. It's built up by impact fees and non-impact fees. The last project we did was last year, and that was the widening of Boot Road, which came 100% from those funds. We don't really,
No
Yeah.
source of revenue for it.
no, we don't get impact fees
So it's a
anymore.
dying fund as we spend, once it's spent, it's gone.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. So that's a targeted fund, but with no further revenue.
Yep, and then we have their sewer operating fund, considered an enterprise fund, so this is 100% funded by sewer rates. The picture to look at here is the increasing costs and our declining balance. Hopefully this gets turned around somewhat with our rate increase, but it's hard to see it happening quickly just because we've got so many projects that are
Yep.
gonna drain some of our existing sewer.
Been some improvement here, but still I see an expense under the refuge that the expenditures exceeding revenues, but even though we had the increase this past year.
Yeah, I think this year we may have a small surplus come in, and that's gonna be washed out basically next year. Our current contract does allow a COLA increase, and I'm projecting if that came in at 7.5%. Hopefully it doesn't, but current estimates are it could be 8% or higher. So
You know, while we're on the refuse, for those who may not have heard it yet, I think we had action on it our last meeting. AJ Blazinski, which is our refuse and recycling hauler, we're under contract with them as the bid was awarded. This is our first year of a 3+1+1 contract cycle. AJ Blazinski sold its equity in the company to a firm out of Canada, a very large waste management company. I forget the name, but AJ Blazinski is going to continue to operate as AJ Blazinski. The trucks won't change, and our contract will not be impacted by this equity sale. Staff stays in place, Mr. Blazinski as well. And it's a good thing because had there been a real mix-up in it, this is not a great time to go out for bids on anything. So just wanted to let people know that AJ Blazinski will continue to look like AJ Blazinski, but if you hear they were sold, the equity value of the company was sold by Mr. Blazinski to this company.
and the rate increase that we did have last year was kind of taking 5 years outward look at it. So knowing that we might have a tiny bit of a surplus, hoping not to raise rates for that period as the contract goes, and we do have an existing balance, and technically with the refuse fund, you should really be closer to a zero balance.
For the remaining.
So
years of
does that
contract.
include the $20,000 expense for the new toters?
Yes,
That includes that, so.
Yeah. looks like we would have to get that whole thing applied for before the end of October. And
Okay.
based on our prior estimates, it would be about roughly 20,000 for all the toters, and then
But
the
the
other
money,
180
the
would
money
be
is there for it.
It's in the budget.
in the budget for the 20,000. Yes.
Okay.
The total we're talking about has to do with
Recycling.
recommended by the,
Yeah,
the
with lids on them.
Sustainability Committee and
Okay.
covered.
So moving along here then, Dave.
Here's our bond fund trend. You can see, I mean, this is what you plan, and this is why you get a bond to spend it. There's no good sitting on it. Obviously, the pandemic hurt us because we didn't get to do all the projects in a timely way that we wanted to, so things have gotten more expensive. We thought a lot was going to be spent last year, but it wasn't. So we are looking to spend in a combined effort in 23 on the rest of the major projects that were highlighted earlier out of the bond. So 23, we're assuming that we pay off the Westtown Way pump station, and then we the payments, not all of it, but some of it towards Milltown Dam Park rehabilitation. The sewer reserve fund, this is linked inextricably with the sewer operating fund. So sewer operating makes transfers at the end of each year to the sewer reserve fund. That includes the 130,000 for relining that Mark and I were speaking about. And then it also includes 160,000 for capital assets at the treatment plant. Currently, we think that we're probably $2.5 million. This is before this coming year, under what we would need if we had to replace the entire system. They don't build it like they used to. Things that you thought were going to last 20, 25 years are lasting 10 to 15 years. So we're seeing a few more things go. We've had to do some blowers. We've got, luckily those are in good shape. We've done them. What do you call that, Mark, when they refinish it?
Relining?
What they did with the blowers in the past?
Rehab.
Yeah, they were refurbishing them. We do that with almost all of our equipment. Public Works is great with that. So they extend the life of it, keep it at a low cost, and hopefully keep us from a high expense. But even with that, I think with the projects that we have already outlined, we're probably going to get to just over a little over $1 million by the end of 2023.
That's not.
The blue is revenue, right?
Yes,
That's totally user fees?
yes, from the sewer operating fund.
Okay, and user fees are from 22 to 23 are going up a lot. But apparently the expenditures are going up even more.
Yes,
Well, John,
What are
make
you-
sure you're talking about the sewer reserve or the sewer operating fund
he's talking about
The
sewer
reserve.
operating revenue, and
revenue,
he's talking about,
the sewer reserve then.
I'm on the
expenses.
sewer reserve page, that page up there.
Right.
But what if I'm reading it correctly, our revenues are going up, just about double. But the,
it's in the form of a transfer.
It's a contribution that comes from the operating.
Just like the
fund,
general
like
goes to the capital, sewer operating goes to sewer reserve.
okay.
So
So
if you
Like that.
increase
The
the
increase-
transfer, John, then you would have a higher bar on the blue there. But the transfer is remained relatively fixed the last number of years, so that's what it is relative to expenses.
I think the question being asked is why are the expenses going up as well? And what are the specific items?
Why
driving
are
the
they going
expenses?
up so much more? Yes, exactly what I want to know.
Westtown Pump Station.
No, let me go back. Just
No,
pull
that's-
up the,
Well, some of it's.
in
deferred into next year.
23, 830,000 for West Goshen sewer treatment plant upgrades.
Mhm.
Hershey Mill State Sewers, 500,000, and the UV disinfection systems, 150.
Right.
Okay, so our big projects are in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're projecting they will be done or at least worked on 23,
Yes,
in 23. Is it possible, once those projects are done, that orange line will be shorter? That expenditures will decrease?
yes.
Okay, that's what I
Well,
wanted to hear.
yeah, and
So
that's
you
a
get another
presumption
Hershey's
you
Mill
don't have another
station.
Hershey's
we-
Mill.
Yes,
Okay,
but-
so can we
Yeah,
barring,
but ostensibly, John.
Dave,
Yeah.
barring any unforeseen catastrophic situations, can you project for us what 24 would look like only for that sewer reserve fund trend?
That's a tough one.
Can you, just
That
only
is a
one?
tough one.
Yeah.
So can
Well,
you,
if everything
would you
stays
consider that?
status,
I would really like to see if you can possibly trend it out, just if you possibly can, just
Not-
on the one.
Not tonight.
No.
Okay,
I'll be amazed and I'll bet you lunch that he will do the projection through 24 and I'll bet you that the fund balance in the sewer capital reserve will be less than what it is there at 1.15 mil at the end of 24.
well,
I'll bet you lunch.
I'll be getting with Mark and we'll be doing our 5-year capital plan, and that'll be
I wanna
capital
see
and sewer
just one-
capital and
Just that one item. I'd like to
Sure.
see if that
Okay.
can, if we can see what it's gonna look like the year after that.
Yeah, that'd be
because
good.
I'd like to see the impact of the fee increase, what that's gonna look like.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
But
One of the things we have
if
to
I
keep
can
in
add to
mind here.
that, just keep in mind that we didn't have any idea about the Hershey's Mill
Of
estate.
course.
Sure.
As I
So
said, I understand
You
that.
want a projection
I just
for
want
next
I want a
year.
projection, not including any catastrophic things.
Let me
Just if
build
everything
on
were
that.
status quo.
Well, if you can do two if you want, do one without catastrophic
And one with,
catastrophic.
sure, yeah.
But
and that would
what's
be
the,
fine.
What's
what's,
the
what's the
catastrophic?
catastrophic? It could
A
be.
million and a
Million and a
half?
half.
It could,
I'll
it's like
remind
shooting a
every,
dart because it could
That's-
be
yes.
something as
Yes,
small as, you know,
That's,
little
that's
neighborhood
why
or-
it's a projection, not a.
Don't
yeah, but I'll
Don't
remind
look for
everybody that
actual.
our infrastructure was all built out around the same
of course,
decade, right?
of course.
So if you think Hershey's Mill Estates is an isolated
It's not.
incident, you're dreaming. And
No,
if
I
we
don't,
don't plan for that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a real problem if we
I-
don't maintain our
I-
surplus. I'm
I
just
don't
telling you
disagree with
right
that.
now.
Well,
But I
you're
just
gonna
wanna
be
see.
They
borrowing.
plan for it. I'm not gonna raise taxes unless I know there's an actual cost.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you that you better plan for infrastructure going forward because if we have aging infrastructure in East Goshen
We
Township.
have an
And if you don't want,
infrastructure
if you don't
reserve
want to
now.
pay for it through taxes and surplus, then you're gonna
Pay through
be
debt.
borrowing.
You're gonna pay.
You're
through
gonna be
debt.
borrowing
Well,
money. You're
you
gonna
gotta
have a
have a
catastrophic
future. We look in the
sewer
horizon.
system and you're gonna be out doing bonds at high interest rates.
And that's why this, I mean, we're just talking about the sewer reserve right here, so that's based on the sewer rates, not
Yes.
a tax, yeah.
And the
And,
projection that we would do for 24 would assume the same kind of a number transfer from the operating fund to the reserve account. We wouldn't be increasing that because that would put further, so there's a question there about, is that transfer, is that enough money? I mean, that's another fundamental question.
Yeah, and to David's point, we have $10.9 million in sewer debt alone, which
Mhm.
expires in 2037. So if we did have to add to that in the current environment, I don't even know how much we have to take out,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
we'll look at it.
No,
Without
but,
proper.
but assuming that we are going to be able to get through next year without something catastrophic. I'm looking
I
for
hear ya.
just, I
Yep.
want to see how that would impact, even if you kept everything the same for this year, including the fees that we've just increased
Mhm.
imposed on the residents. I think just having a projection of how does that help next year's?
It should be about 530,000 if everything was equal,
So if
adding
everything is
to,
equal.
adding to a reserve, but that,
Okay,
All right, good.
Operating
Okay,
reserve.
that's good.
Keep
That's a good
rolling.
one, Michelle.
operating reserve fund, we touched on, this one was split, that's why it, breaks out for the expenditure,
Mhm.
22 budget, 22 projected, that was moved to 1.25 million to the infrastructure sustainability. They call this also the rainy day fund. Something
Yeah.
terrible happened, we'd be able to, continue funding. The ARPA fund, this is temporary, so we got the money starting a first tranche in 2021. We just got the second tranche in 2022. And we're projecting all of that money to be spent, hopefully by the end of this year. Finally making some interest on the funds. They were invested in short-term interest rates.
Nice to close out a fund though, isn't it? One less fund.
Yeah.
I did that at East Bradford. I was like, oh my gosh, we got rid of this fund. That's great. That's one less fund to manage and budget.
Have a celebration.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, quick question. Sorry, to jump back to the operating reserve fund, but I know it was mentioned that we could dive into there before a millage increase. What type of projects could be covered by something like that would be, is it, because I'm looking at the list that you guys prepared, is it something like is it snow materials, paving materials? Like what would be,
It would just go into,
Anything.
go into the revenue and it would play against.
so
the
we
whole
could use,
operating
so
fund.
we could transfer X amount of dollars from the operating reserve fund
Yeah.
to the general
It's
fund.
probably the most
And before I-
versatile.
Yeah.
Before I started last year, the budgets normally would have an operating reserve transfer built in. I think the first cut of 21 had $500,000 to $800,000, and then got whittled down with some deferrals, some additional police monies, things like that, and cut some expenses. It went down to 150,000 thereabout. That was never actually transferred. That was budgeted.
But Dave, I want to see if I'm on the right page with you. We weren't talking at that point in time for that budget about using the operating fund. We were talking about using the general fund balance, our equity fund but not the operating fund to balance the budget at that point in time. So if we've got $7 million in our general fund balance, which is unallocated dollars, these are allocated dollars in the operating fund and the sustainability infrastructure sustainability fund. Those are allocated dollars to those funding needs. But we balanced the budget with some dollars last time using fund balance, not operating reserve.
It looked to me like it was
Well,
operating.
when we create a budget, we have to create a balanced budget.
That by law.
The shortfall, right, by law, the shortfall, say it was $150,000. We plug that one line number as a transfer from fund balance as to balance the budget,
Yeah.
to come to a $0 budget.
That's what we did last
That
year.
transfer never happens because in the past few years, we have increased revenue from EIT or unexpected
Yeah.
real estate transfer sales. So that covers what would be a transfer
event.
from fund
So on
balance.
paper,
But Mike's right.
So it's on
I
paper.
misspoke. It's not really an operating fund transfer. It's a general funds balance transfer.
yeah,
It's just a plug number to balance the
Exactly.
budget. If we were to close shop tomorrow, we would have to
Yeah.
incur those costs or that transfer.
And reduce our existing balance.
and you recall the conversation we had, because in prior years, the board had approved a budget with substantial deficit. And I said, I don't like that. It's supposed to be a balanced budget. It's supposed to be zeroed out. So let's try and whittle this down. And then if we need to use fund equity from the fund balance, then we do. But as you're right, Chris, hopefully it's just a paper transaction in the budget, not affected through actual, and we get revenue to perform to offset it.
Okay.
All right. Last slide.
All right, infrastructure sustainability. This was again created from the 2021 surplus and also a transfer from operating reserve. Currently, we're budgeting Bow Tree Pond to be spent in 2023, about a $325,000 project, looking to spend about 25,000 this year, 300,000 next year. We do not currently have a process to continue refunding this. So we started it looking forward. But you can already see when the general fund is, we got to find $740,000. We're not anticipating transferring anything additional into this fund. So we're not growing reserves.
All right, well, I think that the public has heard enough from us on this. And the board will have other opportunities to comment. Are there any comments from our neighbors here in the room?
Let me make a comment.
Go ahead,
Come up to the-
come on up to the
Come
mic.
up to the mic, please.
And while you're
I
coming
just-
up, John will talk. Go ahead.
I'm probably on behalf of all five of us. Thanks, Derek and Dave, especially for the
Yeah.
obvious hard work you put
Yeah,
into this.
thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
very
Thank you.
clear, well done.
And please state your name and address for the record.
I'm
please.
Mary Ann Lipton, 1680 East Strasburg Road, Westchester. I just have a couple of things to say is, according to the budget, is that do you go through line by line and say, is this a have to do or a nice to do? That's where we have to get rid of all the nice to do's and
Yeah.
just do the have to
Agree
do's.
100%, and we do.
And one of the nice to do's is that trail. We're right, we're at the Goshen Executive Center, right on that trail. I've never seen anybody on it. My niece went on it once and she got asphyxiated from all the fumes off the road.
She all right now?
I had to detox her, but she was fine.
That's serious.
So, I mean, literally nobody's on it. And if we're paying to maintain that in the winter, that's a waste of money.
Mhm.
I see people out there shoveling it. What's that? $50 an hour? Well, no, I think that if we put a notice out to the township, this is not maintained during the winter, then stay off it.
So perhaps maybe the section between the sections C, perhaps, can we close that down in the winter time when there's bad weather? And just say this section of the trail is not maintained. Is that something that we can consider?
I
You
don't
know?
think so.
Interesting
I
idea.
don't think we can keep people off the trail and,
Okay,
and
There's
I wish
nobody
you would have
on
been,
the
I wish you would have been there on Saturday during the art walk.
I was there, but that's the
well,
only
that-
time anybody's ever.
Yeah,
used
well,
that.
and you should be there in the morning when kids leave.
I'm there at 8:20.
Kent, the apartments and go to school using the trail and back from school. One of the reasons the trail is not used as much as it possibly could be used is we have a critical gap in the trail.
Well, it was
Section B.
difficult too during the art walk
Yeah.
to go over all those intersections. That was ridiculous. That's the first time I've been on it and I was like, oh, I would never go on this because you have to go over so many intersections.
You're saying nice to
And then
have,
you gotta
it's not,
wait for the light to turn and then,
you were saying nice to have, it's not budgeted for the 2023.
yeah, but I
Correct.
know in the future, I think the whole thing was a waste to begin with, but that's an old news, but is there any plan for the purpose of that? What's the purpose of that? I mean, it goes nowhere to,
Purpose of what? The trail?
yeah.
The trail, I've said this numerous times because I support the trail and I support the network of developing a trail over the generation ahead. I think it's going to be an important part of our suburban community going forward. Again, we haven't planned, this suburbia was initially created a series of isolation amongst neighborhoods when it was first developed, when we moved from a rural society. And I think going forward in this next generation, pedestrian trails like that, which may have a more multimodal value, are going to be more beneficial, more valued by the community here, as well as connecting with other communities. But it's going to take a long time, decades. This was a start. There were some differences about whether it should be finished or not. Now the board is thinking about an alternate trail to complete some element of the section that was not completed along Paley Pike. We have divergence of opinion on that. We've had a lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. It was just recently settled. So my opinion, my position has been it's a future asset. It's a value. Is it an absolute need? Absolutely. No, but again, I think you have to look to the future and,
answered my question.
I think that that's the
So
way.
we need
way
to
you
get
do
rid
it.
of all the nice to have, but not necessary until we can get some of these big projects
Yeah.
paid for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I
Thanks.
have to say.
Yeah,
Thanks,
well,
Mary Ann.
thanks.
Thank you.
Clifton, Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
If there's anybody else, please come on up to the microphone. Okay.
Yeah, that's a nice, we should get rid of the pickleball. Yeah, the park. So we get rid of the park, pickleball, just get rid of the parks and. Yeah, well, that's not future looking.
All
That's
right,
not
let's-
future looking.
Let's
Okay,
not-
that's
let's
not
make an
back and
arg-
forth.
Argument.
So go ahead, please state your name for the.
Rochelle Velasky, 1319 Park Avenue. My concern is the Milltown Dam Project. From what I hear, it was supposed to be, the construction was supposed to start in the fall of 2022. And it doesn't sound like it's even close to being started.
No, we just received the permit, ma'am.
Okay, now, so do we have any anticipated time frame when anything might start?
Yes.
I would love for it to start before the end of March. That was my goal.
You mean next March?
Yeah.
Mhm. March 2023.
Because of all of the delays with getting the permit from the DEP, our hands are tied. We just could not do anything. We couldn't get a bid on anything.
Well, I
Until
saw
we
that
had
on,
that.
on March 2021, that the township received the notification from the Department of DEP that it was, that they were working on it. So now you're saying they just finished?
Literally
We-
last,
we
literally
applied for it-
Thursday.
we Applied for it in February of 2020.
Let me
No, I have the
answer,
notification
let
of
me say,
2020.
the woman to my left started calling the DEP about a month ago.
No, in June.
No.
It was a June, okay, and she wouldn't let the guy rest till she forced him to respond and finally
Issue the permit.
issue the permit, and we've all been frustrated.
Oh, I
It's-
mean, I've been
It's
relentless.
so ugly now.
Yes.
Well, sure
I
it
mean,
is.
totally ugly.
We know.
And it
Well,
used to be a
remember,
nice
this
place
was
to
driven
go.
by The Army Corps of Engineers, that's where we started. The Army Corps of Engineers was requiring the township to rebuild that dam to its standards or some alternative. And it's the same with the Hershey's Mill Dam. The Army Corps of Engineers, one of their missions now is to eliminate as many of these,
Man-made
can I say
dams.
man-made?
Yes.
Man-made dams
Yes.
throughout
Yeah.
the nation to
Mhm.
eliminate them and return the natural ecosystem, the streams that run through it. And so the demands that they make on locales, local governments, et cetera, to say you're either going to rebuild it to our standards or here's an alternative that you can do, which is what we took, which was the less expensive alternative to breach the dam, create. Well, the pond, once the pond was gone, they then declared it a wetland. That changed the whole design as well. So when you're dealing with these major agencies that we don't own the water bodies, the water bodies are owned by the Commonwealth. And they're overseen by these federal agencies. It's daunting. And an example is the DEP trying to get a permit for over 2 years,
2.5.
2.5 years, so we can proceed. And something was originally given to us as essentially as an unfunded mandate. And the township is trying to make this into a park-like setting and return some of the beauty to it. And in the meantime, you're right, it's been a mess. And we've just had to wait for agencies to give us the go-ahead.
I don't know that
Frustrating.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to walk that far by the time this is done.
Yeah.
I mean, I only live up the street and it used to be a great place to go walking.
Yeah,
And it's dangerous on that street in the first place
it is. So.
Just-
Why?
because there's no sidewalks.
Sidewalk.
Or
There's
trails,
no-
or pedestrian
and there's
trails,
no-
perhaps.
But there's also no
Bingo.
shoulder.
Bingo,
Really, there's no real shoulder
really?
there.
There's
So-
no shoulder.
No.
There's
You
nothing.
two
There's
are
no
acting
shoulder.
up.
Just to clarify too, this is one, unlike Hershey's, we're not fully breaching the dam. It is actually going from a high hazard to a low hazard dam. So we're
Right,
lowering the
right.
dam. Just want to clarify.
The other
But-
thing to mention is that the other unfunded mandates are the stormwater management mandates from the state.
Right.
And one thing to remember on both the Hershey's Mill Dam and this project is we're getting credit for stormwater management against the requirements of the state. So it's a dual purpose. It'll build these two nice parks. It'll improve the dams, and we also get stormwater management credit with the state for the project. So it's a double win.
David's referring to the MS4 permitting system that has been another agency unfunded mandate from higher up to municipalities, and they have scrambled for years now, trying to figure out how they're going to implement it. And with carrots, with no carrots, but a lot of sticks. And
It's gonna
yeah.
pretty much take care of our 5-year
permit.
PRP plan, pollutant reduction plan, which is mandated at a 10% reduction for pollutants.
So
Please.
you're anticipating this is going to start March of 2023.
That's our hope.
That's our current.
And
hope.
how long is that project
It
anticipated?
could be,
Rest of the year.
what,
more.
9
Well-
months to a year and a half or so?
But that short, I mean, at that time,
Could
frame it could be
possibly
done.
longer.
I mean, I would say it's an 18-month
We
project.
weren't trying to hold it up. It was the DEP that held it up.
I mean,
for
Mark,
2.5
what do you
years.
say? I think it's an 18-month
But if
project
bids are
myself.
awarded and contractors
Yeah.
get going, I mean, it will be, it could be 8 to 10 months of, excavation and improvement work that goes on once the bids are awarded.
We will be starting the bid and engineering process before
Imminently.
March.
Oh, yeah.
November, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I would love to bid it out before the end of the year because I'd like to have a town
Yes.
hall in January.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay,
And
thank you.
there will be notification going out to the residents in the area,
One right here.
reminding
Good.
everybody and letting everybody know what's happening.
Good.
So something will be coming out sometime in the coming weeks.
Because we all have been waiting.
We know, and we're very sorry, but unfortunately, it's really not been us holding it up.
Okay.
Like I said, I've been relentless calling the DEP.
Thanks.
Come on up, Jim. Oh, gee whiz.
You missed the layup?
Wow.
Jim Douglas, 1405 Grand Oak Lane. Couple things. One, kind of reverting back to the Paley Pike thing. You had mentioned that we have to finish this pike with the funds that we got, these grants and all that? Are they allocated directly for? Is this a simple yes or no question? You don't have to-
Funds that's been spent.
Okay, so that's a future project. I know we're putting off
Yeah.
down the road. All right, that's fine. We'll worry about that another time. But I'm more leaning on the whole budget, the entire budgetary process. When I'm hearing what John said with all the other funds, there's a roughly $13 million in funds. Is that correct? In reserves
Reserves.
of our money,
It may be more than 13 million.
Taxpayer money.
of our tax. I just want to,
Not all your money. Some of that money, the township did a smart thing back in the 70s and 80s when the developments were happening here, is we collected money from developers and contractors and put that money away rather than spending it. And so some of that money came from way back. And so there are other sources of funds,
but a good chunk of it is
grant.
from taxpayers'
It's
money.
it's not like it's not like there's $6
Absolutely
million of that money, Jim. It's mostly taxpayer money. Yes.
Right. So my question is, you're asking to increase our millage in a recession. People are struggling. And we have a reserve money, you have reserve money of our money. It
Yes.
doesn't make sense. We voted people here across the country and across locally, Cody, Michelle, John, that I voted for, to not spend more money than they have to. Increasing our taxes to have a reserve that we have the reserve doesn't make a lick of sense to most people who have a budget. That's all I'm saying. I understand that we're going to have some capital outlay. I get it. Mark, what you guys do in this township is fantastic, and I agree wholeheartedly. But if we literally have our annual budget in a reserve, then we have the money to go ahead and manage through. Carolyn just said earlier today that Chris, I'm sorry, my bad, that the money, we had allocated $150,000 to come out of that general fund to have a zero balance. We didn't have to do it. So why do we need to increase our payments for next year's budget, knowing that we thought we were going to be short last year and we ended up not being short next year? Let's see what happens? Our neighborhood has a little community fund that we take care of. We capped out, and it's a nonprofit fund, and we capped out our funds and we're like, why do we have this much money? Why are we still collecting our neighbors' money? If we're having this money, we're not spending it. We all looked at each other like, you're right, we shouldn't do that. Let's just stop 1 year of taking dues. And we did that, and we brought the fund down to a manageable level that should be. That's, I think, if you took a poll of everyone here in this
Thanks, by the
neighborhood.
way.
Huh?
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take a poll of the people in this neighborhood, in this township. Which would you rather have? A bigger rainy day fund that is bigger than already our budget? Or let's just hold steady here for a year because we are in a recession. People are struggling. Gas is up, food is up, everything is up right now. And now you're going to nail us with another, whatever, half mil or mil. I'm sorry, I think it's a bad thing to do. That's just me. And I bet if I took the poll in here, I would think looking at, and I bet you if you did a poll on
Zoom.
everybody on Zoom.
How many are on Zoom right now? I
Nobody
agree.
wants to pay more taxes. We all agree.
Right. So why do we want to pay more when we don't need to?
We're not sure yet. That's part of this
And
whole
that-
budget process.
Okay.
And that's why you're here.
That's
then
why
I-
I'm here, and that's why I'm gonna come back on the 14th when and I'll probably say the same thing again.
I Dave, quick question for you. For the millage increase that we were discussing, like the deficit shortfall next year, what percent of that is because of first responders, and emergency personnel? So 40% of the increase?
$180,000 of it is
Yeah.
associated with emergency services.
But that's if we
Yeah.
give them all
That's
the
not
bells and
one, I
whistles
guess
that
that's a
they
need.
have asked for.
Want. Right.
It's,
That's if we give them all the bubble gum and the
half and half.
bubbles.
But looking beyond next year, their budget is projected to increase about $400,000 a year.
Okay. That's,
I think it's also
and
important.
we'll
to-
take, and you already said we had an unexpected, real estate taxes are up. When we have a transfer of taxes, you got to admit that the dollars are up because look at the value of our properties. When you sell a house, whatever the percentage of that estate tax, that transfer tax is going on, that's more. I mean, my house, when I bought my house was less than $200,000. I could sell it for close to 600 now in 22 years.
Yeah,
So
it
you're,
used to be roughly half the value was assessed of what it sold for, and now it's you're only
right. So,
assessed at
so
30%.
we're making more money on transfer taxes.
Yeah,
So
0.5.
and it's probably going to continue to happen. So that's why I'm saying, let's just, instead of taxing people, let's ride it out. Let's see where we fall. Don't raise the taxes. And how shortfall are we? We have the rainy day fund, $13 million of rainy day fund that we can tack into and say, all right, listen, we don't want to push this down any further than whatever that threshold is to maintain our AAA bond rating.
The rainy day fund is actually more like $1.2, $1.3 million.
Your
But,
overall point's well taken. though. I
okay.
mean, that's certainly something we're gonna look at.
Right. And that's.
The existing
right.
general fund
That's right.
balance is
We're
more
not finished.
like
Right.
6,
Yeah,
7 million.
yeah,
I get it.
Good comment, though.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
It's
That's
all-
all I'm saying. and-
I'll make one
Go ahead.
comment. Your expenses are going up, my expenses are going up. Inflation is increasing, but guess who else's expenses are going up? Our salt costs more, our road maintenance costs
course.
more,
Labor,
our labor costs more, our maintenance
Our
costs more.
police costs more.
Our costs are going up as well, so that, you know. that we're-
Fully aware of that.
yeah, so
What
that's-
what
that's-
I'm getting at is that, let's see where it falls.
Yeah,
Last year, we
absolutely.
you thought you were $180,000 short or whatever that number was, and it ended up not
Yeah.
happening.
The other
So
thing,
before,
Good point.
it's important to notice is that that's not a $13 million bucket of money that we can move around. Some of those are dedicated funds that can only be used in the bucket they're in.
Like
So
sewer.
that's,
I get that. I
Yeah.
get that. And what I'm talking about is that it's there.
And then Jim, too, one thing I want to notice, I'm not minimizing your comments because I 100% agree. But one thing too, for the $500,000 increase that was discussed, and I'm not saying that this amount is, not a
Oh,
month.
I understand.
It's like, it's $10 a month. That would be an increase per year.
And for most of it's
Yeah,
not an
for 20
issue.
bucks, yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's the.
I
principle.
understand that. I just wanted to put in
To
perspective
me,
too.
it's a principle.
School
I- I-
taxes
I-
each year going up.
I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah, we're getting hit from everywhere.
I hear
Let's
you.
get hit again from our local, and again, what you guys do here is fantastic. If we didn't have, I mean, this guy right here is probably, we're godsend. to
He
have
saves,
that.
he saves us a lot of money.
Yes, it does.
Are there any other comments in the
Jim.
room? Come on up, please. Thank you for coming. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for coming out tonight.
My name is Jerry Ruffinack, 200 Reservoir Road. I want to thank my neighbors for coming out and making all those great comments. I appreciate it because these guys aren't hearing you. And you can tell just by the way Mike Lynch responds to you. He's the futurist. He thinks he's got all the plans for us, where we're going, spending $9 million. And I hope all you people on TV are watching this because both Lynch and Shuey are the only two people that mentioned raising taxes. The other two are, other three are considering it. They haven't mentioned it yet. These two want to build, spend, and bury us. They're the leftovers from the Marty Shane era, and they're killing us.
I disagree
And you-
100%.
You can't stop hearing yourself talk. So that's all I'm going to say. I got a billion other comments.
Well, you
I just
made
don't
it
wanna-
personal, so what's your
I-
name again?
My name's Jerry.
Jerry Rubin. Well, Jerry, you made it
Rubinack.
Not
personal.
Ruben, Ruffinack.
Ruffinack. Oh, yes, I know that name.
And Mr.
Good for
Ruffinack,
you, Mr. Ruffinack.
Mr. Ruffinack, I actually went on record saying that I would be voting against any tax increase.
I appreciate that. I do. You also worked to advance the trail. And then you went into negotiations with my friend who I went to high school with, Sarah, who didn't want that trail in front of this place and negotiated with that. And
I
now you're
didn't.
Planning to build that part of it. That's money we don't need to spend.
I agree.
You've got numerous people here who already stated that trail has been used. You can name one event where people were there. But I can name thousands of days in the time it's been up there. And you.
Mr.
are
Ruffinack,
very-
you can come on. Do you
and-
mind
and
coming to the
Hershey
microphone?
Mill People, which you all seem to represent, except Cody, we're not them.
I'm not. One up. Please, absolutely. Are there any people in the Zoom room who are going to have a comment? Okay,
My comments are a little of hindsight.
you know that we have to, for
But
the record, I'm sorry, Joe,
I really like,
got his
uh,
name.
Joe Bonanno, Hearn Road, East Goshen
Thank
Township.
you.
I know this is hindsight, but it actually plays out into this budget. Does anybody know the exact amount of how much the trail cost from start to finish? Or from start to where we are right now? Hard and soft costs.
Dave, do you have
Dave-
that slide?
Dave has that information.
We have it.
And if you don't, or if you can't with hard and soft costs, I'd like to see the contracts on the trail.
The contracts would have to be,
specifically
that would
the
have to be a
hold
right to know.
harmlesses
Yeah, you
that the
can do a right
township-
to know on that, Joe, for
Yeah.
the contract.
The contracts, I think that would have to be a right to know.
Dave should have the.
But what I'm
the-
interested in.
I
is
don't have the
hold
breakout of the
harmless,
hard and
one
soft
spot,
costs with it, but-
Wawa, and the commercial.
the total
buildings, et
spent.
cetera,
Go
that
ahead.
we're
Joe,
responsible for. I
Here's the
think.
total.
The total spent so far is $5,483,048.
Say that again?
$5,483,048.
Was told.
Total
Now.
on the trail.
Yes, $3,071,748. That is grant money. So East Goshen out of pocket is $2,411,299. And that's hard and soft
That's
together,
all hard and soft costs.
together. Yeah.
Okay, now does that include any liability on the hold harmless agreements on the contracts?
Yeah, don't we have general
I mean, you
insurance?
can't forecast that.
Yeah, but we don't include
Because if somebody
our
slips,
insurance
trips,
costs,
or
because we've got,
falls, It's coming out of the Wawa and there's an accident.
we have an
you know
umbrella
we're gonna be
policy.
enjoying.
Yeah, we have an umbrella policy though that covers that.
That umbrella policy had nothing to do with that. It
Yeah,
really
it-
doesn't.
Well, I
Because
mean,
your
we-
insurance rates are going to go up if there's accidents on that thing. And you are responsibility for the maintenance. Okay, that has to be shoveled in the winter. The debris has to be taken off. You're going through 6 lanes of traffic when you cross it. And that's a pedestrian walkway with bikes and kids. So
So what
that's
is your,
going to happen.
what's your
When,
point?
we don't know. But it's going to happen. But I'd like to see the contract of that.
Okay.
Another thing, Do you know the total
Right.
amount of money that we've paid West Goshen for their sewer renewal?
Sewer renewal.
Yeah, well, for the reconstruction.
Yeah, I went through that one too.
Is there a contract involved with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Now, we have something like 16.9% of the plant.
It's based on flows.
Just of the
contracted
plant.
flows.
Yeah, 16.67. We've spent $4,370,580.
With a right to information act, can I see the contract with it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it goes back.
Is the contract in perpetuity?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, is there any?
What year was that one
reciprocal- Is there any
Uh,
reciprocal
decades
agreements
ago.
77,
between West
87.
Goshen and East Goshen?
I'm sorry,
In
say
other
that
words,
again?
You know, passing back and forth product?
oh, no. there's-
No.
that's-
Oh, no,
No.
us, we go, all
No.
of our waste
No.
water treatment, it's only, we're going, sending it to their plant.
They don't
They're
send
not,
any to
there's nothing
us.
coming back to us from them.
No,
We're,
How about from West Town?
nothing from West
Do we
Town.
pro- do we
It's called the
process-
West Town
do
Pump
we
Station.
Process from any other township?
Very little. We do.
A little bit.
Okay, and if
Yeah.
we don't use the 16.9%, do we get a rebate?
The 16.9% is capital infrastructure improvements to West Goshen. So that's how much
It's based on the max flow.
Yeah, it's-
So
it's
there's
based
no
on max
rebate now.
flow. There's
Well,
no
that's
rebate.
our max flow, right?
But we could get
Well,
up to
how about
that
if we
point.
don't get to our max flow? What
oh,
happens?
well, wait a minute,
We-
our max flow is 750. We have
No.
250 in reserve.
Five.
Really Creek, 750,000 gallons a day, we're flowing about 322 gallons. West Goshen, we can flow up to 1 million gallons a day.
Right.
Not, we're flowing there by 760.
Yes, right.
760,000 gallons a day.
Okay,
Average.
but there's no reciprocal agreement
No.
for anything.
No, if we don't use that flow,
Yeah.
we don't
Well-
get a
well,
rebate.
Just theory, just as a matter of theory, if we take West Town, let's say, we're
We
getting
don't.
West Town's,
We don't.
But it's hypothetical.
We
Go
do.
ahead. Yeah.
okay? Can we send product to West Goshen on behalf of our 16.9%?
From
Yeah.
another township, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting question.
Well, if there was, if there
Whatever
was
we get
a-
flow over
what?
there.
Where do we get?
If there, you could have a transfer
I would-
agreement.
I would let Mark answer.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what I mean.
maybe
It
Mark
does-
can-
What he's asking
Well, that's why I want to see,
Jared.
I'd like to see the agreement.
Oh, sure. you
is
can
if
say
we
it.
don't use the max, can we suck it in from somebody else? and
Let
send
Mark
it over?
explain.
West Goshen, dumps in us 5 different locations. And each one of those places they dump in is a meter. So we gather, we read those meters every day. Then we go to the West Town Way meter, where it's going to the West Town Way pump station. We take the numbers we collected from where they dump in, we subtract that from West Town Way meter. That gives us our total flow. Now, if West Town were to, let's say, some cider and oil would come into us, that would be a fixed rate, but that would come through us into West Goshen. And West Town is solely responsible for that. We don't get any credit.
Okay, well, so we don't get any revenue for it. Okay, so there is no reciprocal price agreement for all intents and purposes.
It's all based on flow. That's.
Well, okay, flow. There's no reciprocal pricing on the flow. No. I think that's a problem. Because you're getting nothing and we're paying capital costs. I mean,
What are we supposed to be getting? I'm just a little confused. So hypothetically, how would it work under what you're saying?
hypothetically, and I've seen this with other townships.
Okay.
Okay, because they basically all work like this. And this is where you have the sewer, people coming in and buying the sewer, facilities. in various
Capacity, yeah.
Townships because it's very profitable. But if, for example, Willistown has to have their product processed, they would ship it to East Goshen. We would put it in our Ridley plant. Okay? What's the pricing that we charge them? Do we charge them the pricing that we're charging our,
Yeah, then we actually would be billing those users. If there were, say there were 5, let's just say there were only 5 houses in Willistown that had to use the Ridley Creek plant,
Which is about
So we're
true.
pricing-
which is about what it is.
we're
We actually
charging them
charge those
our
individuals.
prices?
Well, we charge their township our prices.
Okay.
Yes, we do that. I was confused by the language you were
Yeah,
using, but we
yeah.
do use that.
Yeah.
We do that right now.
And we
And
have a contract.
If we have
with them.
reciprocal product into West Goshen, we don't get paid for that.
No, what you mean by
I don't know what you
I
mean by
don't-
reciprocal
I don't know what
product.
you mean either. I'm
Well,
confused.
if they're using West Town pumping station, Let's
called the
pretend-
Westtown Pumping Station,
But
but it
it's-
doesn't have anything to do. with
Westtown Way Pumping Station.
It's Westtown Way Pumping Station.
with us,
Yes.
Yeah.
correct?
Well,
Okay,
it-
So it's our pumping station.
No, it's not our
Westtown-
pumping station,
Westtown Way Pumping Station is located on Westtown Way,
but it's
but
West
it's
Goshen.
West Goshen Township
Who owns it?
who owns it.
Yes.
Oh, okay. West
Okay.
Goshen Township.
West Goshen
Correct.
We
Township
use it
owns that.
substantially. and
We
that's why we're
use
saying-
that.
And they're the ones that we partner with.
We partner with them.
Okay.
Kind of like we partner with the police
But
department
they
with
go,
Westtown.
it goes directly to West
It's not.
Goshen, under West Goshen rates, not our rates, correct?
No, it's
No,
a
it's our-
contracted
it's
rate
our-
for our
it's a
flow.
flow
with
rate.
the-
Right.
It's a
Anyway,
rate,
I,
but
I,
it's a
I
flow
just
rate.
like, if there's an agreement on pricing
Mhm.
or via the contract, I'd like to see it.
Well, That's the best thing to do, Joe, is just, get the contractor, Joe, so we
But
can
we'd
review
be
it.
glad
and
to have you
comment.
look at it.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe you can
absolutely.
come up with something
Absolutely,
better.
Joe.
Has anybody considered a cost accounting in just these two areas, let's say? Start out with just these two areas.
Ask Dave.
Uh,
No,
Oh, I don't know what two areas we're talking
hold on.
Just-
Joe, if
just-
you'd
wait a
like to
minute,
see
hold
the
it. Let me
contract,
finish the
see
question.
the contract and have this
Just-
discussion with them. Not, this is a budget discussion, Joe. Have that
This is a
meet with
budget. This is part of the budget discussion. You spent $9 million on the trail, close to 9 million, whatever.
No.
We've only spent
No.
about five and a
Spent
half million.
All right,
We
5.5.
spent 2.4 of our own
We
money.
spent 2.4.
Okay,
And we don't have anything in for the trail next year, by the way.
okay. Let's take just the trail and the West Goshen and the sewer authority and do a cost accounting on. it. See if there's any way that you can approve.
Sure, why don't you meet with the staff and you can go over what you think that looks like? Yeah, that's a good idea. Go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, meet with the staff, arrange an appointment, and come in and talk to them so they can understand what you're looking for. And then they can
Okay.
give you a copy of the
You've never
contract.
heard
All
of
right.
cost accounting?
So I think that it would be better if we did take this offline because I think
right.
that, Joe, it's just, I think that it needs to be something that we have Dave look at specifically with you. I think that you'll get the answers you're looking for and then maybe you
Yeah,
can
I'm
bring
sure
it
about
forward
that.
in
But
October.
they'll be able to share with you, especially the contract too, Joe.
And make sure that you put that in an email to Derek for the right to know, Joe, for the contract. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you all.